that section, he's still on General Patton there?
Yeah.
So
He got to the border of Czechoslovakia, and he had over 400,000 troops under his command. And he wanted to go right in to capture the whole of Czechoslovakia and capture the city of Prague. And Eisenhower sent him orders not to go in, that the agreement was to allow the Russians to take Prague.
Was he anxious to fight the Russians?
Go rushing right and capture Berlin, and he was ordered not to do that.
He wanted to take it from the Russians, or to beat the Russians?
Beat the Russians.
Oh.
He'd get there before they would.
He didn't want to actually fight the Russians?
Oh, no. Well, he actually, he said it was a terrible mistake to end the war when you had, he said you had Hitler and Stalin, and the one was as bad as the other. And he said, we defeated the one, and here the other is going to be stronger than ever.
Yeah, well, that was true.
Yeah.
Are you going to read the section about the ancient battles?
I kind of doubt it.
What was that first general in the book?
Epaminondas.
Was he?
And,
what country was he with?
well, I have to read it.
Greek?
Yeah, but Sherman knew all about the accomplishments of Epaminondas, and so did Patton. They both studied his achievements.
Well, that's good when a general has a sense of history.
And he lived in 370 BC.
370 BC.
Thebes, the present-day community, is built right atop the ancient. It is a pleasant but little visited Greek provincial town. No one travels to Greece to experience either ancient or modern Thebes. But pity, there are indeed certain things worth seeing there, and so forth. So, connected with the city of Thebes in the 4th century BC.
There's a map.
With Sherman's march, it said that he moved about 15 miles a day. They say that that's about, for a walk, the distance that a person could cover. But he had his men covering 15 miles a day for week after week and month after month. So that was a tremendous achievement. But his theory was these men encounter all kinds of physical ailments by just staying in camp when they're in a stalemate with the enemy. Neither side can win. And it takes that community existence takes a terrible toll on men. And actually the men are in better physical condition in a war of movement. They're more interested in of course, in his case, where they did all that foraging, they'd go out and get all kinds of foodstuffs. At that time, the army, you had no refrigeration, so there was no way to preserve meat. And they would have to take livestock. They'd take chickens, kill the chickens, and it'd be like a daily barbecue. Kill cattle, and there'd be all kinds of campfires where each group of soldiers would be cooking their own food.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be thousands of campfires with the soldiers preparing their food and eating their food.
don't have the campfires anymore.
No.
The air power has really changed the way wars are fought.
Oh yeah, that's what this fellow said, the war has changed completely. He said, in previous times you'd see your enemy, you'd be fighting man to man. Today they drop bombs from miles above, fire artillery shells from miles away, and you're killing people right and left and you never are aware of it.
Did they not, before in World War II, before the Normandy invasion, they didn't have enough air power to, now they would just destroy those coastal defenses through the air power before bringing in the landing craft from the sea, but I guess they didn't have enough air power to do it.
In World War I?
No, in World War II, when I was watching the Normandy landing, I was thinking, well, why didn't they use air power to destroy those
well, they
coastal
couldn't do it on the
defenses?
day of the landing. They had bombed and strafed those areas, but they were in entrenched pillboxes.
Well, nowadays with cruise missiles, those would obliterate those.
Well, that's true. The weapons today are far more powerful.
I think they'd be able to just wipe out those coastal defenses before they came in.
So war is getting more terrible all the time.
Well, not if you were in the landing party at Normandy, you'd be happy that they had wiped out
the war is
wiped out the pillboxes. Those were
that was
big
awful.
problem.
Men going in under fire, and it was a mistake to go ahead when the sea was rough. There were thousands of those men that were desperately seasick. They were on those landing crafts and small craft. They were thrown all around. They could hardly move from the seasickness.
Well, that's the thing I was thinking. Well, couldn't they have used they couldn't use them for an extended period because they'd be too heavy to carry, but couldn't they have given them metal shields when they came off the craft, about an inch thick and steel, and then just used them to advance a couple 100 yards against machine gun fire from the pillboxes, and then
the men were they were loaded down with all the equipment they could carry. They had ammunition and everything on their backs. They had to carry all kinds of supplies, a heavy backpack.
Well,
That's what Vincent, his experience, they were going in to land on the beach, and the Navy man who was commanding the landing craft all of a sudden said to them when they were a couple of 100 yards out, he was getting frightened with all the fire they were taking, and he said, "Get out here." And Vincent was in charge of the group of Marines in the landing craft, and he said he took his rifle and pointed it right at the head of the Navy man and said, "Take us right in there."
Well, that was good.
He wasn't about to, disembark at that point. They would have all been killed.
Yeah. But I think if you watch it, one thing I was thinking, normally though with the shields, you could leave your head. Once they took the cliffs, there wasn't really anything after they weren't under any fire, so they could have left their supply packs on the landing craft, and then come out with the shields, and then within a couple hours, they had taken the cliffs, and then the coastal defenses would be wiped out. Then you could have gone back to the craft at your leisure and got your supply packs. But the shields, I think, would have saved.
Well,
saved
that's probably true, but they didn't think of that, and it's just like with police officers.
They use shields sometimes now.
Yeah, well, they do, but they didn't for a long time, and they didn't use the vest. The vests have saved the lives of many police officers. cold-blooded world, I'll tell you. That's what Sherman was so shocked by the type of war that Grant and the previous generals, they just kept throwing their men at the enemy, and they were just taking terrible losses, and they were considering they could get more and more troops all the time.
Well, it's kind of ironic that Sherman, with his march to the sea, is considered the ultra-violent one, but really he was more, in terms of his tactics of not attacking the enemy head-on, he was actually more, showed more respect for the lives of the soldiers than the other generals
did. And then he appeared right with the men, and they'd see him. They were calling him Uncle Billy, but they had a fondness. And Patton imitated Sherman by being very prominent to his men. He would ride about in a vehicle without a roof, and he was not affected physically by that. It was in cold weather too, but some of his aides got sick from the extreme cold and being out there without the protection of an enclosed auto.
Mm-hmm.
One of the terrible things in the war, and it was that the men got trench foot. And that incapacitated more men than bullets did, because in the dampness, they would get their skin would develop terrible skin ailment there on the feet.
Kind of like athlete's foot.
Well, 10 times worse than that. That would be incapacitating, and they were never given instructions on how they might be able to avoid that. And there was no organized effort to prevent it, but it caused a terrible loss of manpower. And then frostbite was an awful. Men's extremities would freeze. They went through a bad winter in 1944 and 45.
Now they have all these high technology materials that would probably protect them from that.
Yeah, but they didn't have those then. And then the illness, disease would spread. They never got the proper nutrition. They lived on terrible, reduced diets, and then they didn't have the proper protections from the elements. They were out in the open, digging can you imagine just going out in the backyard and digging a trench and then sleeping for tonight and that, and all the dampness and everything?